Welcome to Behavioral Grooves, the podcast that explores the intersection of behavioral science and life. I'm Kurt Nelson.
And I'm Tim Houlihan. In each episode, we bring you insights from researchers, authors, and practitioners who help us understand why we do what we do, and maybe, more importantly, what we can do about it.
Yeah, and our guest today is Mark Crowley. He is a medical doctor turned financial service executive turned author and podcaster.
That's a lot of careers, I gotta say.
That it is. It's a lot of careers. Now, Mark's new book is The Power of Employee Wellbeing, and it builds on his earlier work, Lead from the Heart. And he makes a bold case. If we want thriving organizations, we need to stop treating engagement as a checkbox exercise and start genuinely caring about the well-being of our people.
Mark argues that emotions, not rational logic, drive both our personal decision-making as well as the vast majority of our workplace behavior. He reminds us that belonging is not just a nice to have, but actually the single biggest driver of employee well-being. He shows us how simple actions from a leader or coworker asking, "How do you feel this week?" to tossing a bag of candy to each branch manager.
That really works?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
It can build rituals that create meaning and camaraderie.
The rituals and meaning. There we go. All right. So in our conversation, we dug into why engagement surveys have failed to move the needle and why leaders still cling to old industrial age myths and how caring about employees is not soft, but actually the path to higher performance.
So pour yourself a favorite empowerment beverage, settle in, and enjoy our conversation with Mark Crowley. Mark Crowley, welcome to Behavioral Grooves.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
It's a pleasure to have you here, and we're going to loosen up with just a speed round of 4 quick yes/no questions and Kurt's dog in the background.
Yeah, wow. Like, should I be worried? That thing sounded ferocious.
Thank God we're virtual. Okay, first speed round question, Mark. Would you prefer to learn a new instrument or a new language?
Language.
Nice.
Any language come to mind?
English. No, I'm just,
I agree.
There's an aspect for that.
I play no instruments, so learning a new one would be, right? I mean, I have no talent for that, unfortunately. So I think it would probably be a deeper understanding of Spanish. I live outside of San Diego, so I have a pretty good basic understanding of it and can converse. But to be fluent in Spanish would be great.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, Mark, would you rather live in a 35-year-old body with a 95-year-old mind or live in a 95-year-old body with a 35-year-old mind?
95-year-old body with a 35-year-old mind. No question.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
That was pretty quick, too.
I don't want to lose my mind. And you look around and you see people that are in their 90s today that continue to be thriving. You know what I mean? And I look at that and I just think, okay, even if you can't move, if you're not ambulatory, but you still have your mind, you can still have a satisfying life, I think.
Yeah,
of course, that's assuming that a 35-year-old has a decent mind.
That's correct. Right? 35. That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Third speed round question, Mark. True or false? Emotions drive up to 95% of workplace decisions.
True.
So the idea of the rational management thing is largely an illusion.
Correct. Well done. Good question there. Very well done.
Yeah,
Nice.
there might be something from your book about that we might get into a little bit later.
Might.
But the last of our speed round questions here, Mark. For leaders, which is more important, emotional intelligence or technical skills?
Emotional intelligence. Just simply no question.
Yeah. Well, that is a good answer because we are going to be talking about emotional intelligence and employee well-being for the rest of our time together here this morning. We're speaking with Mark about his new book, The Power of Employee Wellbeing. And Mark, we know that organizations have focused on employee engagement for well over 30 years. right? We've got all data from Gallup and other scores, but they also show that employee engagement is kind of stuck in the basement. What have leaders gotten wrong about this whole engagement disengagement problem?
There will be some people listening to this perhaps that would say, no, no, no. In my company, we took it very seriously, and we did what we needed to do to elevate employee engagement. With those few exceptions, most
Yeah,
companies, most
you
companies
think
never.
they're anomalies, basically.
They have to be
They
anomalies,
are.
because, so I'll tell you something interesting. I don't know what motivated me to do it, but in 2013, I reached out to Gallup and ended up having a conversation with Jim Harder.
Mhm.
And he's the head
Yeah.
of research for
He's
Gallup.
the guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
created the engagement study. He actually created their well-being study, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
And so I think I was writing for Fast Company at the time, and I had an instinct that they had some data that might be helpful. And so we got into this discussion, and he said, we have this study coming out, the American Workplace Study, where we're showing that engagement is awful. Like, it's only
Yeah.
30% in America, and you've got about 20% of people that are actively disengaged. And we're having this conversation, and he's giving me this data. And I just said, hey, would you mind if I publish this in my article? And so before they published it in 2013, my article went out, and it was the shot heard around the world that said, "Oh my
Snap.
God, we got to fix engagement. This is like killing us." And so, but the amazing thing is that the numbers that were in that article are the same as they are today.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so if somebody wants to argue that, oh no, we've taken it seriously, you really are an anomaly, because if an aggregate across America, and by the way, it's not any better outside of America either, it's actually worse.
It's yeah.
Then you have to own up to the fact that in the big picture, the companies didn't take it seriously. CEOs didn't take it seriously. It was like, somebody telling you the world is going to end tomorrow, and you wake up and you're like, oh, wait a
It
minute,
it
we're
it
still
didn't
here.
end.
you know so
Yeah.
once that happens, it's like, well, it doesn't really matter. People were hitting their numbers, people were hitting their goals, and they were like, engagement doesn't matter to this, so why should I be concerned about it? So they do the perfunctory thing, which is to survey people twice a year, and then they take their time in digesting the feedback, and then they distribute it to the managers, and there's no accountability, and people think, well, it must be an HR initiative. And so this is just the silliness that we've been talking about, except that it keeps showing up in articles. And I'll tell you a funny story, that when I pitched this book to my publisher, apparently there was a whole group of people in the room to make the decision as to whether they're going to do a book or not. And they were like, hallelujah, like somebody's saying that this is stupid, that we should be continuing this. And I said, well, why? And they said, because we do a lot of leadership books, like they get 1,500 pitches a year. And he said, almost invariably, somewhere in the book, it'll say, and according to Gallup, engagement is only 30%. And, like, they're the first ones saying it. And they're like, we're so sick and tired of it because nobody's doing anything with it. And by the way, investors, the stock market never really took it. They never put pressure on CEOs to deal with
No.
it.
Right.
So, Shakespeare said, past his prologue. If we just continue, it's going to be 30% 5 years from now and 20 years from now. And it just makes no sense to continue with it.
So Mark, if companies are achieving their goals and they're hitting their numbers and they're doing all this, does it matter then? I mean, obviously, if leaders aren't taking it as seriously as we want, I mean, the scores are bad, but why should we care if I'm a leader and I'm going, well, I'm still hitting my numbers. It's fine. I don't need to really focus in on
Well,
this.
I think you answered the own question, which is that they don't care. Like, it's all superficial. The whole thing is a shell game. It's not sincere.
But
So
the shell game is important enough to continue doing it, right? I mean,
because
because
I
almost
think
all companies do it.
I think it's like, the language that Jim Harder used in one of our conversations, which really lodged with me, was it's a check the box activity. It's
Mm,
just demonstrate to people that we take this seriously. And so we're doing this survey. But,
Yeah.
so let's say I work for you, Kurt, and
yep.
you never appreciate me. And so in my survey, I write, I work for a manager who's never appreciative, and I kill myself every day, and I just would like to be appreciated. So, the survey gets back to you, and it doesn't say Kurt, just says my manager, right? But it comes to you and you see it. And then there's never any accountability. You don't come back to me and say, I got survey feedback, and some people don't think I'm appreciative. I'm going to work on this. So the next time I get the survey, I'm like, why do I bother putting anything in here? Kurt never got better. He never appreciated me. Nothing changed. So now
Well,
it's even worse. It drives engagement even further down because people are like, well, in the vernacular, screw this. Like, this is all very insincere. And so it's sort of just, it makes no sense to continue talking about this.
But at the same time, you're hopeful. Is that, am I mischaracterizing the book and your perspective on that, Mark? You have a sense of hope and optimism, don't you?
About what specifically?
Yeah, well, about managers could be better, and employees
Well, yeah,
who are engaged could
I
be
just think
more
that,
productive.
there's 12 questions in the engagement study, and as broad ranging as, I know what I'm supposed to do every day, to I have a boss that cares about me, to I have a best friend at work, right?
hmm
So with 12 different questions. So if low engagement, if you get an indication that you have low engagement, is do I fix the friend problem? Do I fix the right? Which one do I go after? And so it's very complicated in a sense, and managers don't have the time to really digest this. And the other thing is that we measure this twice a year. So right, but you go, okay, so we're going to really invest in making sure that people know what they're doing. We got to wait another 7 months to find out whether we're succeeding or not, right? So to me, it's just very complicated. But what I find fascinating, and why I wrote the book, is because it's it's as simple as this. Sort of, it's almost ridiculous what I'm going to tell you, but it's so powerful at the same time. Which is, and I wrote an earlier book, my book Lead from the Heart. A basic premise is that we're not rational people. We're driven by feelings and emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now we have research that shows if you just simply ask people, how do you feel at the end of this week about work? What's your overall sense of well-being at the end of this week? That there's a linear relationship to how they produce. And it goes all the way deep into organizational success. So, in other words, if people say on a scale of 1 to 5, or bright green to bright red, very happy to very unhappy, either way you want to measure it, that generally people are leaning into the green, you're going to see productivity soar. And if people are marinating in fear or not being appreciated or all the different kinds of things that would lead to them to say, I don't really feel that good, you're going to suffer, right? So if we understand that you can ask one question every once in a while, how do you feel? How do you feel generally this week after your work week? How do on a scale of 1 to 5, how do you feel about your boss being supportive of you? How do you feel about your growth opportunities? So now I'm asking you a question, one question or a couple of questions. And there's technology now that, like, immediately it gets distributed to all the people who are impacted. Then you can have a meeting and you can go, hey, people are generally feeling that we're really not appreciative. What do we do about that? How do we fix
Yeah.
that? So you're recalibrating in real time,
Mm-hmm.
and that gives people power. So to get to the heart of what you just asked me, Tim, when you realize that it's that simple and you can just pulse people and you can recalibrate if you need to, sometimes it's just life is rough, right? So if you ask people during COVID, are you seeing enough of your friends? Well, of course, you're going to get these bad scores. There's nothing you can do, but you can offset that by other ways of integrating and connecting people, right? So it's intelligence, it's knowledge, and it's real time, and it's so simple. And so where I'm optimistic is that I think that managers don't want to lose good people. They don't want people to not be happy. They just haven't had the know-how to make that happen. And they haven't had the data to know how people generally are feeling. So it's sort of like, oh, you're quitting? Why? Like, well, how come you never told me? Right. So if you're doing these surveys, you're getting a much better understanding of people. And if you really do have a sincere interest in people's well-being, which is the point of the book, it's all in your best interest, not just theirs, then people can feel that. And that goes to my original book, which is that when people feel you care about them, they want to reciprocate. So Tim, at the beginning of this conversation, you said you live in a community where, people will just on a habit make bread for themselves and have extra, and they'll come on by and drop you some off just to be lovely, right?
Yes,
So Robert Cialdini, who's you guys are probably familiar, right? His famous book Influence. He uses this example where, so let's say I live next door to you, Tim, and so instead of bread, I bring you a tray of brownies. I say my wife just made brownies. I couldn't possibly. This is much too much of a temptation. I'll eat them all, and we have extra. So here's a dozen brownies.
So you're doing me a favor if you take these brownies from me.
Well, yeah, but I'm also being generous too, right? To be fair to the story, it's not like I just want to get rid of them and you're the first, right? Gotcha. So I bring them to you. He says, "What's your immediate instinctive feeling?" So I'll ask you both. So okay, so what? So I come to both of you and I give you a dozen brownies. He says, "Be honest. What's your first response?"
Gratitude.
Okay, Kurt,
I feel like I need to give you something back. I need to reciprocate.
It ain't gratitude. I'm just going to speak in the vernacular here. It's like, oh shit, I got to do something for this guy. Like, would you like a glass of wine? But the reason, right? So, but the reason is you may also feel gratitude, right? But there's something inside of us that says, I got to do something for him. And the way Cialdini, I don't know what it is.
Cialdini. Yep.
Cialdini. Okay. So what he says is that it goes back to like prehistoric times when I have a piece of meat and you don't, that I will give you a piece of my meat to sustain you. But as soon as you get a piece of meat, you got to give it back to me. Like, so this is his theory of reciprocity. And what I've learned is that when you genuinely care about people and people can feel it because you're displaying it in so many different ways, it's authentic, it's irrefutable, that people want to reciprocate in the very way that he described.
Yeah. Hey Groovers, we're interrupting your regularly scheduled programming with some big news, and we want you to be a part of it.
That's right. We've got not one, but two massive milestones hitting at the same time, and we're throwing a party to celebrate both of them.
Okay, so milestone number 1, we are about to cross 500 episodes this fall. When we started this thing back in 2017, Tim, did you ever dream that we would make it to 500? I didn't.
No. Not at all. Never crossed my mind. And milestone number 2, it's our 8th anniversary. So we're combining both celebrations into a single, epic, live event in Minneapolis.
Yeah, and that live event is going to happen October 16th, 2025. So mark your calendars. And we're going to be taking over a private room at Malcolm Yards in my hometown of Minneapolis, where Tim used to live when he was cool. And here's the kicker. If you attend, you'll get to participate in a live behavioral science experiment with Nick Epley.
Yeah, the famous University of Chicago professor, the researcher who proved that talking to strangers can actually make your day better. He will be sharing some observations on a happy life, and the audience will participate in a hands-on experiment.
And this isn't just a party, it's science in action. So check the show notes for details, but consider this your personal invitation to join Tim and me, as well as many other people, on Thursday, October 16th in Minneapolis. Make your travel plans. Sign up now. Make it happen, folks. Here we go.
We can't wait to see you. And until then, keep finding your groove.
All right. So question for you, Mark. In the book, you highlight how belonging is the greatest driver, I think that the greatest driver of employee well-being. So when you talk about that, what are some of the really actionable ways, if I'm a leader in an organization, that I can foster a sense of belonging? You already talked about just at the end of the week, asking people. I think that's more about them, but how do you foster that sense of belonging?
Well, let me first emphasize how important that discovery is, because in the book there's all sorts of statistics that indicate that most people would never guess that belonging is the greatest driver of well-being, or that it matters at all.
Yeah.
Right? So what we're really saying here is that when people feel that they can be themselves, and this goes beyond psychological safety. It's like, I'm Mark Crowley, and I'm working on a team of people that like Mark Crowley and
Mm.
respect Mark Crowley and want to hear Mark Crowley's ideas and also accept his peccadillos. Right? I don't generally like striped shirts, but he's got one on, and I'm okay. I mean, but it's right. So it's and Jan Emmanuel Deneuve, who's at Oxford University, who's done a lot of this research, he's actually shown, the old adage that people don't quit companies, they quit bosses. What he's
Yeah.
what he's shown is that people actually quit because they don't feel they belong.
Mm.
So the team. So, one of the things that I learned early in my career, prior to writing books and so forth, I had a 25-year career in financial services. And in the teams that I managed, the emphasis was, if you want to be on this team, if you want to work for me, the expectation is that you're going to be a cooperative, collaborative member, that we're not here to compete with one another. We're here to ensure everyone succeeds. And so if that doesn't appeal to you, if you want to be the star, go somewhere else, because you can be a star, but still be collaborative and cooperative.
Mhm.
So I think that's really the best recommendation that I can give your audience, which is to foster deep a sense of teamwork. Like, you are here to have each other's back. So if somebody botches something, which we all
Yeah.
do, right? The first reaction is to go, well, Mark was the one who dropped the ball on that. I told him 2 weeks ago to get to that.
Yeah.
Instead of that, it's, you come to Mark and go, okay, this didn't go out well, and for whatever reason, how do we solve this? Let me help you.
Yeah.
That is a deep sense of belonging. So now I know that if Kurt, I work for you, that instead of you coming to me and going, what the hell happened here? And, you're going to pay for this, and all the things that I'm already fearing are going to happen because I botched it, that it becomes how do we rebound? And you see this in sports all the time. Somebody makes a
Yeah.
bad pass, or a pitcher gets off to a bad start. The team doesn't go out to the pitcher and go, what the hell are you doing, man? You've walked the first three guys, right? But that's how we treat it in business. We're so quick to,
Yeah.
just be harsh on people and judge people.
Yeah,
So
that was my follow-up question to that. Was, we see that and we appreciate it when it comes to coaches and teams and various different things. And yet and Tim and I both have done consulting with a number of different leaders in different organizations, we don't see that so much. We see it as like, oh no, we're looking for the star players. We're going to reward the star and forget the team. As long as we got our couple guys that are hitting it out of the ballpark, we're fine. So where is that disconnect from your perspective? Where do you see that?
it's
Why
a
does that come into
great,
play?
it's a great question. And in my first book, I actually wrote that, when we watch coaches and players in any sport, that we want them playing with heart.
Yeah.
We love it when we see a coach come up and hug their players, or, pat them on the head, kind of a thing, where you can just see that there's like sort of a paternal or maternal pride for that, and like a joy in the seeing somebody else succeed. Right.
Right.
So
Right.
we love heart in the arts, and we love heart in, sports, but don't bring that anywhere near business. And I think it goes back to traditional leadership theory, which says pay people as little as possible, squeeze as much out of them as possible. It goes back to the the industrial revolution. And so the idea has always been, and we just pass on these ideas from generation to generation, that people don't want to work. You're going to have to, keep them under your thumb. If they're out of your sight, they're not working. All this mythology. And so I think it's just a belief system that says that we have to oppress people in order to get them to perform, that we need to kind of obliterate before we're able to do this.
You brought up the Industrial Revolution. This is something that has plagued me for a long time. Is why is it that we're holding on to these myths from almost 200 years ago? That it's just kind of ridiculous that with all of the work that's been done since Peter Drucker, like in the 1950s and 60s, it seems like management could have evolved so much in that time with the work that Gallup has done. There's so much great research to support getting behind the idea of emotionally supporting your employees, and yet it's really, really slow to take off.
Well, I mean,
What do you think?
nobody knows that more than I do in terms of, my first book came out in 2011, and I paid somebody. I came out of corporate world and had a great career, successful career, but I had no platform, and so I was recommended to pay $10,000 to a woman to help me build my platform, and so instead of helping me identify how to build a platform, she goes, "Look, I read your book. I read some articles you've written." She goes, "I just have one recommendation. That's what you're going to get for your 10 grand here is this recommendation." And I go, she goes, "You're not going to like it. You're going to want plan B, but I really want," I go, "Just give it to me straight." And you can edit this out. But this is literally what she said. She goes, "You're going to fucking fail if you continue to use the expression lead from the heart." And I said, "Did you catch that check?" But what she was telling me in 2011 was that you're going to be met with so much resistance because we are so offended by the idea of caring about people, supporting people. It's like it's a transactional thing. You're going to get pay, you do your job. If you don't do it well, we got somebody sitting in the other room waiting to take your chair. And that's how we've always believed. And so, but I also think there's another element of this that I would like to blame, and that is the routine expectation that companies have to report earnings on a quarterly basis. So CEOs are always under the gun to hit numbers. And so it's hard to argue that an investment in people is going to pay off in the quarter. So you just keep deferring it. And if you're 1 month into the quarter and you're not hitting your goals, then it's like everybody gets in a room and they go, "What are we going to do?" And it's like, manage with fear, manage intimidation, tell these people they're going to lose their job if they don't. And it's Groundhog Day. So we just continue to do this over and over and over.
Yeah. And in the book, you mentioned that caring for employees is not, and I'm using air quotes here, soft leadership, right? And I think there's part of what you're just saying is that there is this myth of, if I'm not tough on my employees, or not even tough doesn't necessarily be there, but if I care about my employees, and you talk about loving your employees, that's soft, and that somehow means I'm not a good manager. And so how can we overcome that belief that people have around that? And then how do we demonstrate that as a leader? Yeah.
Well, so here's something really cool. And it's in the power of employee well-being, but it happens to be research from where Tim lives. So Barbara Fredrickson at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. So we're having this conversation, and she is really one of like 2 or 3 people that confirmed this idea that we're not rational. There's others. Antonio Damasio wrote an incredible book called Descartes' Error. Descartes famously saying, "I think, therefore I am," and he's wrong, right? But building out from that, Barbara Fredrickson is somebody who basically said that we are hardwired as human beings to thrive on positive emotions, and that we actually need a disproportionate ratio of at least 4-to-1 positive emotion experiences in our day. And this is true of all relationships, including marriages, couples. But basically, that means that if we thrive on positive emotions, then we as leaders should be intentional in giving people the experiences that translate into the positive emotion. So I call that paying people with emotional currency. It's not pay that's going to do it. It's not giving somebody another $100 that's going to translate into somebody being truly inspired at work. It's going to be whether or not that need for emotional, emotional experience, positive emotions occurs on a regular basis. So when you're appreciating people and you're making people feel safe and you're giving people opportunities to grow and you're promoting people from your own team and you have rituals together and you have a deep connection, people will marinate in positive emotions. Let me just finish this one piece though to the issue that Kurt raised about loving your people.
Yeah.
Barbara Fredrickson said to me that what she has figured out is that any experience of positive emotions, interest, love, awe, joy, any of them, hope, they're all individually an experience of love. So when I say love your people, I'm not saying, hey, I love you, man, or coming up, right? I'm saying love people because that's what we need as human beings to thrive. So the argument that I would make is if you help people thrive, isn't it natural and understandable that they would perform optimally than to put them into fear and intimidation and keep them under stress and wondering whether they're going to have a job or they're in the next round of layoffs, all of these things that we do, which put people into negative emotions. So I hope that answers it. Sorry.
It does. Thank you. No, that was fantastic. So
and at the same time, like we still need to maintain a sense of accountability. We've got high performance standards. We've got this quick turn. Everything runs on a quarterly basis in the corporate world. How do we marry up this idea, Mark, of loving the employees and giving them all this support and feedback? And you talk about autonomy in the book as well as being so important. How do we marry that with accountability and high performance?
So it's a great question because I'm sure your audience is like, okay, you do all this caring, and then at the end of the month nobody does anything, and
everybody will be fired in 3 months. Yeah,
and fear, right? So it may help people listening to this to know that I managed salespeople most of my career in all kinds of different responsibilities and different levels and so forth. But principally, they were responsible for driving sales performance. And every team I ever managed thrived. Every team I ever managed, when there was a competitor, if you will, if there were other, people like me managing teams of business that were equivalent, our teams consistently outperformed them. And so I was very demanding. Like if you ask people, that used to work for me and go, what's one word to you that you would use to describe Mark Crowley's leadership? They'd go demanding. Like most people go hard. And it's like, no, it's not. It was demanding. But what I used to tell my people was that we used to set the bar so much higher than everybody else did. I mean, we raised the bar and just said, we're aiming so much higher than everybody else in terms of our performance. Now you have to link rewards to do this. Otherwise you're taking advantage of people, right? But in the sense that people understood that we were trying to do great things, I reminded them, nobody is getting the support that you're getting. You come into a meeting and somebody just had some exceptional accomplishment. You're in the room, not just congratulating them and being jealous of them, but hearing what they did to do it so you can take that idea and go do it yourself. So we're going to reinforce everybody's growth and success that way. Imagine coming into a meeting where you're feeling like there were like 35 people in these meetings and knowing that they're all your friends, they're all here to support you. We're celebrating the team more than we're celebrating the individual. And it just became this wonderful experience for people to work really hard. So you can be demanding as long as you're supporting people. The problem is that what we tend to be is demanding without supporting people, and people burn out. Right. And they're like, I can't do this anymore. All you do is want. So you've got to give back if you're going to set high expectations.
Thank you. There's a couple of different pieces I want to touch on. One, just from what you were just saying, you talk about this idea of the team and building up the team and focusing in on that. And you wrote, the great benefit of team rituals is that they help develop a deep sense of camaraderie and togetherness, as if everyone's in on a secret, leading ordinary events to grow into meaningful shared experience, the kind of experiences that are cornerstone of human and therefore employee well-being. So how if I'm a leader, how can rituals and team building actually transform my culture? How do I tip it that scale?
There's something. I mean, I emphasize rituals, and there's a great book, and I can't remember his name, but he's a professor at Yale who wrote a book on ritual that just really confirmed what I already knew to be true. So I'll give you so the direct answer is I'm recommending to everyone listening who manages a team to institutionalize recognition. So what we tend to do is we go, "Hey Tim, good job today," and then the next day I don't say, "Tim, congratulations on something else you did," because like, well, Tim knows I did. I like him, right? Right.
Already
And,
check the box.
right. Tim's killing it and doing all the things that I want him to do, but that one thank you should last you for a couple of weeks. That's our belief system.
Yeah.
So what I did was at the end of every month. So let's just I'm going to just simplify it. Let's just say there are 5 things that we needed to pay attention to every month. Right? Those are the big goals. So we would bring everyone together. The very first thing we would do at the meeting is we would have the reports on those 5 goals. And I had 34 retail bank branches where you go get mortgages and consumer loans and investments and checking accounts. I had 34 of those that I was managing. So all those managers came in once a month, and the first thing we would do is we would have the reports. And so the attitude for most managers is that, okay, let's say out of those 34, 20 of them hit one of the goals. Let's just the goal number 1.
Okay.
It's like, well, 20s, I don't have time to be thanking all 20. So let's just thank the top 3. Right? That's the attitude. Congratulations to the top 3. But the other 21, I forget my numbers here, but the other ones that hit the goal are like, I hit the goal. Like, why am I not getting any love? Right? And so my belief is if you have, 30 people working for you and 27 of them hit the goal, you have to thank all 27. So what I did was I started at number 27 and said, congratulations. The manager of the Encinitas branch was at 101%, and everybody would congratulate, and we would work our way up. And by the way, this goes to the issue of rituals, Kurt, which was, they loved hearing everybody getting recognition because they knew they were going to get themselves, right? But what I added to it on a whim, they just had this incredible month. And so I used to go to the grocery store like at 6:30 in the morning, and I would get orange juice and bagels and coffee cake and fruits. And I would set up the meeting. I'd make coffee. I'd have agenda. I had an assistant, but I did all this myself. I had the meeting all ready. So when they came in, coffee's ready, food's there, all that. But while I'm in the grocery store, I see this like display. And the bags of candy that have like individual Milky Ways or tier bars or something, they were on sale. So I just impulsively picked. I go, okay, let's just say 5 goals, 30 branches. So I bought 150 bags of these candies. It was sort of ridiculous. What happened was, so now I go, okay, let's get to mortgage lending. We'll just pick that one. And the first branch that met their goal was Encinitas at 101%. So congratulations, Jill Brierton. And I took the candy and tossed it to Jill. And the first reaction was, oh, what are you doing? And by the end of the meeting, people are like snagging them, like, look at me. And they're piling the candy bags in front of them. Like, you see what's going on here, right?
It was currency.
Right? Yes. And so I'm watching this in real time, and I'm like, oh man, I'm going to have to pay retail for this candy going forward. I can't stop doing this. So for the next 3 years, so you come in, if you met one of those 5 goals, you got bags of candy. Well, what ended up happening was they didn't want to come to a meeting and not get candy. I had a manager tell me, that she, in the first meeting, she got no candy. She met none of the important goals. She went back and had a meeting with her team. Imagine this, bank branch, all the employees, and explaining that I went to a meeting with my boss and he gave us candy and we didn't get any candy. And they said, you will never go to another meeting and not come back with candy. So
So
that one,
Mark, did
it
oh, go
was
ahead.
just, it was magnificent. I mean, just magnificent.
Yeah. I was just going to say, did you actually increase the weight of the branches of all of the people because all the candy that you gave out from?
Yeah, I know. Right?
Yeah, I'm sure HR is sitting there going, our insurance premiums have just gone up because there you go. No, it's a great story, and
There's
because
a very cool other implication of this that I didn't see. I just threw out Jill Brierton, who passed away a couple of years ago, but Jill called me the next day after that first meeting, and she goes, "I want to tell you something really cool that happened." So she goes, she went back with like 5 bags of these candies and she put them in the break room, where people go to have their lunch and stuff. And she just put them on the table. And so people were coming in and they're like, where'd the candy come from? And she said, well, Mark Crowley, our regional manager, gave them to us. And they were like, Mark Crowley knows what we do here. Like he's got this big world, like he can be. And she's like, yeah, and this is like his way of thanking us. So she said all day long, people were going and grabbing a Milky Way and saying, thanks, Mark. Yeah. But they're like, so it wasn't just for the manager, it was the whole team was the beneficiary. And I'm like, okay, I cannot stop this. I've got to do this forever.
And love that part of it because it's not just the manager who is actually getting rewarded for this. It is the team members, because I'm sure that most of those managers just didn't hoard that and have it in their own office and that's all they were eating.
No,
they shared it with their branches. They shared it with the people. So now it's not just my name getting named in a meeting. It is the team is actually seeing the benefit of all the hard work we're doing to achieve these 5 goals. And yeah, it's a Milky Way. It's not a big deal, but it means so much more than just a Milky Way.
Exactly. Yeah. If they could go buy the bag of candy and go, here, you didn't win this month, but they would like, I don't want that. Like, I want it from that guy, I want it from him.
Well, in the spirit of cool ideas, if there's one piece of advice that you could give to a new manager, what would that be?
Just broadly, like, in the context of anything.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about employee engagement. We're talking about getting your teams engaged.
I think I have to be careful, but I'm working with a company and they've made some management changes at the top. And what I'm seeing is the very first instinct is to go in and go, not the right person. We got to make a change here. We got to change the way we're doing things. And we think we're being productive, and we think our bosses who gave us these management jobs are like going to be really proud of us because we went in and, we turned things around and we shaped this place up, that kind of a thing. And I actually think that is the worst thing you can do. And that the 2 things that I would do would be to get to know people deeply. Like, what's your story? Like, what brought you here? What's your background? What's your life experience, to the extent that people will share? How can I help you? What's going on in your personal life that I might be able to help you with? I have an elderly parent, and every Friday I promise to bring him dinner. And if I could leave early on Fridays to get there and feed him, that would make a difference. Just knowing that and making that kind of and you don't even have to go, well, if you're going to leave 15 minutes early, you need to come in 15 minutes. If you're going to leave, you don't need to negotiate that, because that takes the giving away, right? But it's understanding that people are human, and if you can make some slight accommodations, like they have a child that they want to take to school, so come in later and stay later. Nothing wrong with that, right? If you can do those kinds of things. But the idea is to demonstrate to people, I want to know who you are. I want to know everything about you. What do you want out of this job? How do you like to be appreciated? Where do you want to go in 5 years? You want my job? You want to stay put? What do you want to learn? so that you can manage people on an individual basis and people feel that my new boss really knows me and cares about me. And the other is that I want to get the lay of the land here. We're succeeding in some places and we're not succeeding in others. If you were me, what would you do? What's the first thing you'd fix? So now you're getting their feet. So instead of just coming in and going, okay, we're not doing this anymore. Even if you know you're right, you know what I mean? Even if it's so blatantly obvious that we're just going to end this, it's so much better to go, look, I came in, got to know everyone. I have a good sense of this team. And I asked you all, what would you do if you were me? And the consistent answers were this, this, and this. And so I'm taking that advice, your advice, and I'm going to go implement this. So now they're like, he listened to us, or she listened, right? That's powerful, right? As opposed to you hear all this, you don't give them any credit. You go, I've made these 3 changes. And the guy's going, but I told you to do that. You're not giving me any
Right.
right? So that's what I
Exactly.
would do if I was a new manager, and be humble.
Kurt, may I?
You may.
I'm here at Behavioral Groove's headquarters, Mark. We often talk about music. We want
Headquarters. Okay, that's funny.
Wait. When did headquarters move to North Carolina from Minnesota? Here,
It's always been in North Carolina since I moved here. Mark, we're not so much interested in what's on your playlist as much as if you were on a desert island and you had a listening device with you, but it would only store 2 musical artists' catalogs. Which 2 artists would you take with you?
Van Morrison, no question.
Yeah.
And I would narrow it down to George Harrison, but I would broadly say the Beatles would be the 2 that I would take.
Then you get George Harrison along with McCartney and Lennon and Ringo, and that's a good call.
Those would be the 2.
I'm Crowley, from what I understand, is an Irish heritage name, right? Are you playing to Van Morrison because you have some connectivity to the Emerald Isle?
But my wife is a Casey, and so that's Irish too. And apparently, we're from the same area in Ireland. But we both sort of think that we have a cellular connection to Van Morrison. I've seen him in concert 15 times.
Wow.
And all over America. And in fact, I want to go they just had the British Open last week, and it was in Belfast. And I thought, I got to go, and I got to go see Van Morrison. I want to play those golf courses, see that territory. I've never been to Ireland. Right? But there's something, funny story, not funny, but whenever I speak, the last thing that I do before I walk out the room, if I'm in a hotel or, if I'm wherever I am, where I'm going now to the venue, even if it's in the venue, the last 2 things I do is I listen to Did You Get Healed by Van Morrison and My Sweet Lord by George Harrison.
Oh my gosh.
And that's my ritual. And but by the time I'm done, I'm so ready to go because those 2 songs have such a deep impact on me. So it's great.
That is so cool. I love that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Mark Crowley, thanks so much for being a guest on Behavioral Grooves today. We love this conversation. We really appreciate it.
You guys are wonderful. So thank you very much. You made this very fun and very interesting.
Welcome to our grooving session where Tim and I share ideas on what we learned from our discussion with Mark, have a free-flowing conversation, and groove on whatever else comes into our well-being brains.
God, if we were only well-being all the time. Actually, I guess most of the time. Got pretty good well-being.
We're well-being. This was a fun interview. I was not sure it was going to be, and I thought it ended up being a pretty fun interview. There you go.
I would agree. Mark is a really bright guy, and it's really great to have good conversations with really bright people. So that always ranks up there with me. So where would you like to start?
I thought it was really interesting. The idea that was brought up that the traditional wisdom is that people don't quit companies, they quit their bosses. And
That's well known, well observed, generally accepted, right?
and there's truth in that, right? There is truth. We're doing work on the groove effect, and kind of doing some research on what gets people in their groove and out of their groove, and it's part of
Yeah.
what we're finding, right? That bosses are really vital.
This is like
But
the study of groovology, basically.
I like groovology. We should rename our thing to groovology. How about that?
It's
That's cool.
groovology, right?
Yeah, there we
Yeah.
go. But I think what Mark is kind of saying is, look, we might have some of this backwards, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That this idea is it's might be more about belonging than it is just the boss. That
Right.
that sense of community, or I mean, this is we're connecting this to Robert Cialdini's work, right?
Yeah.
Liking and feeling like we're on the same team, social proof, social norms. When I
Yeah.
feel like I'm being heard, when I feel like I'm a part of the team, that's a really powerful motivator. It's a really powerful engagement tool to make me feel like I'm willing to go the extra mile because I'm part of something.
Right. I mean, and again, we look back at traditional beliefs where, all right, traditional economics says, hey, if I pay somebody more, they're going to be more motivated. And we know
Right.
that that's not how we're wired. And that's the work that we do every single day is,
Humans
yeah,
are wired. Yeah.
money's important, and more
Yes.
money does drive behaviors, and it does do certain things, but people are craving other things as well. And this is going back to the candy, right? The tossing of the candy, right?
Yes.
It wasn't
Yes.
it wasn't payment.
No.
It wasn't like, oh, this is a $5 bag of candy. Here you go. And it would not have had the same impact if it would have been, hey, here's a $10 bill, twice what the candy cost.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Right? It
Yeah.
was it was proof. It was proof that someone noticed their achievement, and the currency wasn't the candy, it wasn't the chocolate. The currency was acknowledgement.
I love that. It reminds me of work done on why, or just sort of the general behavioral science question of why you remove the price tag from a bottle of wine when you're going to some friend's house for dinner.
Yeah.
You don't want to announce that you're a cheap ass and you only spent $7 on that bottle of wine. You just want them to know that you thought enough about it to stop at the liquor store on the way over to the party to get a bottle of wine for them, to say thank you, to
So
recognize the fact that they're hosting you.
you shouldn't get the 2 bottle Chuck
Two two
from
dollar $2 Chuck
2 buck
from
Chuck,
from
right? Because
Trader
that's well
Joe's.
known that it's only $2. You can tear that price tag off and it doesn't matter, right? But you could get the $3 Charlie and it would be fine.
Well, but okay, so Kurt, why does it work? Why does throwing a bag of candy work better than giving someone $10 that might be worth twice as much as the actual, because they could go out and buy whatever they want. They could go and
Right.
buy a bigger bag of candy if they wanted to.
So what I loved about this was it was going to the branch managers, and then the branch managers brought that candy. It was more candy than they were going to eat, right?
Yes.
And so it wasn't like a gift, like, oh, I get a chocolate Snickers bar and yum, thank you. It was that they brought it back, and when they brought it back, what happened?
It
They
gets
share.
distributed.
It
Yeah.
gets distributed. They share it with their team. It builds this like, hey, everybody, it's the candy at and everybody congregates around. It's like when you have a party, where do people show up? They show up in the kitchen with the food, right? It's like we like that. There's an institutionalization of this gathering of people in different pieces. And I think that is the piece. It's acknowledgement of the bonding that goes on with this. It's the connections that people have. It becomes a ritual. It becomes this kind of look forward to aspect of it. And I think that's powerful. I think there's other ways of achieving that. I think that it's not so. What I don't want listeners is just get bags of candy and give them to your bosses, right? That's
Right.
not what
No,
we're talking about here. And I think there's actually
no.
probably even more powerful ways of being able to do this, that people could incorporate.
Are you thinking just give people more cash?
Yeah, exactly. You just ah, you haven't
I,
listened. You're not listening,
I
Tim.
know I'm not listening. Right. This is an opportunity though to take a good golden nugget and turn it into something for your organization that could be in the form of a variety of non-cash rewards
Yes.
and then recognition,
Yeah.
which have proven to be very powerful at engaging your teams and actually building this esprit de corps, helping build this sense of belonging. If you do it in the right way, if you would apply it in a way that is meaningful, relevant to the culture and the objectives that the company wants to achieve, this can be non-monetary rewards can be very powerful stuff.
So I worked with a large pharmaceutical many years ago, and one of the things that we did, and again, we had to fight for this within the organization because they were going, why would we do this? We created a top managers guild, right?
A
So this,
guild.
yeah. So we called it a guild very specifically. We
Yeah.
brought in this idea of, the medieval guilds where you learn and you're a select group that brings us in. And basically that was their recognition for managers, and people are going, well, and we brought him into home office and we had him basically spend 2 days. We gave him a really nice dinner, but home office was located in an industrial town that wasn't like, you're not going to, everybody's like, so we had pushback that people were going, they're going to want to go to Hawaii. They're going to want to do all these things and have this vacation. And we talked them out of that because we said, what we're doing is we're creating this community, and this community is based upon it's recognizing their achievement. And not only is it recognizing their achievement, it is putting them in connection with the senior leadership within the team. That was part of what we were doing. We were
Yeah.
creating this guild that had special access. So we had special meetings where we talked about, they got previews of things like new products like that nobody else had, right? So there were new products being in development. Well, they just talked to the board about those, and then they came and talked to this group, right? It was like they were on level with the board and the knowledge that they had. They had aspects of, they had special projects. We made them work on special projects. And again, people are going, nobody's going to want to work. And they're going, no, these are special projects that are being sponsored by the president. And it was one of the best programs and highest rated programs that they did, because we were tapping into that communal, that team achievement, that all those different pieces. Yeah.
I think it's a great example of using in group, out group in a really positive way. In contrast to that, when Steve Jobs was developing the Mac and he set up a big tent in the middle of the Apple campus and raised the Jolly Roger over it to say, we're the pirates. And only the people who had access to the Mac team credentials could get into the tent. That created a lot of animosity with the rest of the company. Like, we're
Yeah.
all bright, hardworking, dedicated engineers, designers, and promoters. Why wouldn't we get access to that? But in your case, with your pharmaceutical client, you built it on skill and achievement. And so
There's skill and achievement. And next year, you could be part of this guild. The
right.
guild was not something that you earned once and then were in it for life, right? You had to re-earn it, and you had the
Yeah.
opportunity. So it's a classic incentive, but the reward was tapping into these other pieces, which is again the power of behavioral science in organizations isn't just for marketing or advertising. It is understanding how people interact with each other, what drives their motivations and various different pieces. And so I think it's really fascinating, that part. So
I love that story. Thank you for sharing that. I also want to emphasize this idea that this sense of belonging enhances our relationships with other people. If we feel like we're in the same group, then we're more likely to sort of overcome each other's shortcomings. You
Yeah.
know, a simple mistake. I flubbed up. Sorry about that. The other people in that group, if I have this sense of belonging, are more willing to give me the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, they'll accept your quirks. Like I do with you, and you
Yeah,
do with me,
thank
right?
God.
But
Yes.
but you'll also, to that degree, we're less likely to have the fundamental attribution error, right?
Mhm.
We're more likely, Cialdini's sense of unity, that we actually like that person
Yeah.
better. We will trust what they say more. There's a number of benefits of that belonging that are really important. And I think one of the things is that people can do, particularly leaders can do, is to get to know their team members, their peers more deeply,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I've heard, and I think, and I don't have good research on this, but I think the organizational world and younger generations aren't having those in-depth best friends at work as much as we used to,
Yeah.
right? I
Right.
think that was a thing where your friend group, part of your friend group, that you did things outside of work were with your work friends and doing those things, and you got to know them on a much more intimate, not being sexual, but just on a deeper
Yeah. Deeper level.
connection with them. And that's important, right?
Well, yeah. Well, certainly uh, the pandemic fractured the way that we think about working with other people. It There's been teams working remotely for years and years and years, right? This is
Yeah.
not. It was certainly not new when we got to the pandemic, but it impacted more people, and I think that could have changed this idea of how do we get to know somebody if I never see them in the office, if I don't have sort of just hang time with them, or that incidental we're at the water cooler kind of thing together.
Yeah.
So I get that it's more difficult, but it could be solved by leaders having just more compassionate curiosity
Yeah.
about their team members.
Yeah, good Kwame Christian quote coming back in, that compassionate curiosity, which is applied to so many different things. I
So
think
many
it's I think it's true. I think there's an aspect of, obviously, hybrid and remote work, adding to this. I think there's just a difference too in generations, in how they interact and various different things. And so this is one that I think there needs to be more research on at some point,
Oh yeah.
is
Yeah.
how do you build those connections inside of an organization that are meaningful, that give you a sense of belonging, at that deep level. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Anything else you want to cover before we wrap up?
just how awesome you are, but other than that, no.
Go ahead.
Oh well, we're at time, so we have to get going. Yeah.
um, we want to let everybody know, if you haven't heard already, that we are having a major celebration coming up in Minneapolis, Minnesota on October 16th, 2025. It is our 8th anniversary, celebrating our 500th episode. Big celebration party. We want everybody to be there.
Yeah, we will have
Wherever you are in the world, come.
yeah, hop on a plane, grab
Yeah.
a train, get in your car,
Because
hitchhike,
it's a live in-person event only, so you got to
yeah,
be there.
live in
Yes.
person in Minneapolis. We're going to have Professor Nick Epley from the University of Chicago there.
Yeah.
We are going to
Yeah.
have a conversation with him, and he has talked to us about doing some crazy experiment.
Woohoo!
Ooh, that'll be fun. There
Yep.
you go. You
That's
and
right too.
I are going to share some anecdotes, some
Yeah. Yeah.
stories, some lessons learned, some what? What else?
I think lessons learned would be enough, actually. But 500 episodes, we've observed a thing or two. We've got some thoughts about sort of what makes applied behavioral science work. So, yeah, we'll be talking about that. And if you can't if you just think, oh man, I just can't afford to fly all the way to the United States, then take another flight to Minneapolis, St. Paul, and then take the train to Malcolm Yards where the event is, and then get a hotel and all the expenses involved in that, I have an alternative. You could
Yeah.
subscribe to our
What?
Substack, which is only $5 a month. That would be a super easy way to do that. Oh,
I love that.
It's not exactly
I
the
love
same,
it.
but it's
It's
something.
super simple. People should do it, and they should opt in for the $5 a month, right?
Yeah.
That one, yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
yeah. That's the best. That's the best version of our Substack that you should get. Anyway, and if you can't even do that, if that's too much, you could definitely just leave us a review.
How about that?
Of
That doesn't
5
cost
if you like
anything.
it, if you like
Yeah.
us, if you think that this is worthwhile, it's a great way for other people. It's just that it's that acknowledgement. It's that sense of, you could get a sense of belonging by providing a 5-star review for us, and others could feel like, hey, this is a group I want to belong to and be with.
And even, okay, so let's take it down one more notch. If writing a few words is too much, just do the rating. Just click 4 or 5 stars, whatever it is. Just however many stars you think, it's up to you.
Yeah.
It's
And with
not a
that,
report card. It's just something that we
it's
would love for you to do. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So with that, we hope you have enjoyed this episode. We hope that you are able to take some of Mark's ideas that we talked about in this episode and use them this week as you go out and find your groove.